I Love CVille Show. It's a pleasure to connect with you guys through this network. We're live in downtown Charlottesville, where we talk topics that are local to Charlottesville and to Central Virginia. We talk national and global topics, but we do it from kind of a localized perspective. Today's show is going to be no different. The Albemarle High School scenario with fighting and hazing and sex and unsafety is worsening. Yesterday, we showed a video of to call it a fight, I think would be an understatement, Judah. I don't know how, I often lean to you for sensible perspective. In fact, why don't we start with the two-shot right away with Judah Wickhauer. How would you characterize what we saw yesterday in that video, which we'll show to the viewers and listeners again?
That's a tough one. I mean, it was a chaotic scrum. I don't know. It was just a mess. It was like
we disagree often on the show. That's what makes the show special. I would say that was more than a scrum.
Yeah, it definitely was. That's why I'm saying it's not easy to
I would also call it more than a fight.
Yeah.
A fight is generally an even scenario.
Yeah. And
when five are on one, that's different.
It was also hard for me to actually judge what was going on in that video.
There was another fight yesterday. The police presence has been heightened. And I'm going to ask the question, are students safe at Albemarle High School? I'm going to ask the question, are teachers safe at Albemarle High School? And I'm going to relay to you more perspective set in direct message fashion to yours truly from teachers in the building, literally firsthand perspective from these teachers, highlighting the vulnerability and fear they're experiencing every day. To go to work and to be afraid, few jobs have that mindset or that mentality.
Yeah, and most of them...
You know what you signed up for.
Exactly.
Police.
Yeah.
Military.
Yeah, firefighters.
Firefighters. You signed up with the mindset that your life is at risk.
Being a teacher in inner city school, maybe, but...
Perhaps.
But still. Most people don't sign up as... Most people don't become teachers so that they can break up fights and...
risk their lives.
Yeah.
Exactly right. We'll talk on today's program, the University of Virginia football player Deshaun Perry, one of three young men that were shot and killed. Their family has hired an attorney. This attorney now investigating the University of Virginia, asking, questioning, wondering what went wrong.
Yeah.
Much went wrong in that scenario.
No doubt.
We'll talk Peloton Station. Peloton, more than a restaurant to yours truly, because inner circle friend of this program, Curtis Shaver, I watched firsthand as the idea was birthed. I believe we were talking about this over cold beers at Jack Brown's. Good Lord. 6, 7, 8 years ago. Mm-hmm. They announced yesterday they were closing. This one stings and hits closer to home because I saw firsthand the effort that this team put into building and birthing this brand.
Yeah.
On today's show, we'll talk the exact definition of an accessory dwelling unit in Charlottesville, the exact definition. This is in response to the cottage, the most talked about cottage, shed, whatever you want to call it, in Charlottesville, Virginia, the one on Hinton Avenue that has a $1,100 a month asking price. I will give you the verbatim definition of an ADU in Charlottesville City by city code on today's program. We'll ask the question about Austin, Texas and Charlottesville City. Anonymous, the I Love CVille Network's version of Deep Throat, has strong ties to Austin, Texas, and he's offered some strong perspective on this topic. It's a topic presented by Bob Yarborough, who previously, he's now retired, the King of Redfields, Bob Yarborough, but he previously worked for national Habitat for Humanity. Bob Yarborough has come on this program. He's a champion of craft beer, a champion of good food, live music, movies in the south side of Charlottesville. And man, Bob Yarborough has got one of the best beards in the game. A beard that perhaps, Judah, yours one day could become Bob Yarborough's. Give the show a like and a share and join us in the discussion. Julian Freeman, the queen of Peloton, I feel the same. I'm glad you are watching today. I'm going to do my best, Julian, and if the Peloton team is watching, to celebrate Peloton Station, to celebrate Peloton, and to remember the good times and the special times and the happy times and the sweat equity that went into this. And I think what has happened is a lot of restaurants that have opened in the relatively near future, and the relatively near past, call it the last 5 years, just caught some really bad luck, man. COVID was unpredicted, unplanned, no one saw it coming. Bad luck.
Yeah.
And these closings are not an indication of anything per se besides bad luck. Very different than what's happening with the Champion Hospitality Group. That is malpractice.
Yeah.
This is bad luck. We'll explain why on today's program. Join us in the discussion. Warrior AG, welcome to the show. We love when you've been watching the program lately, Warrior AG. We think you've made the program considerably better, like you did when I was doing syndicated radio on ESPN radio. You often made those programs better, Warrior AG. All right, let's talk the lead topic, Judah. More teachers in Albemarle County and its flagship high school, its largest high school, its most populous high school, Albemarle High School, are contacting me. I'm going to relay what is now 4 additional teachers who have reached out to us. They are listening to today's show. They listened to yesterday's show. And they offered more perspective and asked me to relay it to you because they feel they are being left out on an island and not getting the support of their administrator, their principal in the school, and the superintendent's office. And they are absolutely frustrated and uncertain why this is not being covered in the traditional or legacy media cycle, print, radio, or television.
Yeah.
So here's the message. I'm respecting her anonymity, but I will relay the message verbatim because she has given me approval to do this. Are you ready, Judah?
Mm-hmm.
Good morning, Jerry. I heard part of your show yesterday, and I want to thank you so much for it. It's amazing how these violent acts happen, and there are crickets from other media outlets. In addition to the fight between 3rd and 4th block, there were 2 groups of students, a large Latino group and a smaller African American group in the doorway that were screaming and yelling. I was one of 3 people present at first and called on another teacher for help. A couple of other teachers came out, but why was there no presence by student support or admin during this popular time and place for congregation? There were additional safety people in the building yesterday. They were taken from other schools, so I hope nothing went wrong in those schools. Teachers were asked to be more present in the hallway and dedicate a planning period to monitor the hallway. I did sit in the hallway during 1 block, but was largely alone except for students. The main problem with that is if something were to happen, I had no way to communicate other than screaming and yelling that help is needed and no training to deal with it myself. I'm a pretty small person too, so I doubt I could stop or help a fight in progress. This is a huge problem at Albemarle High School, and rather than bury their heads in the sand, Albemarle High School needs to bring back school resource officers or provide staff with robust training to deal with these serious and sometimes physical conflicts. She also said, and even with all the extra safety personnel at Albemarle High School yesterday, there was still a fight between two girls that teachers broke up well before any safety personnel arrived. I saw this video. She says, thank you for your help, Jerry. You can use anything I say as long as my name is not attached. And here's what really demoralized me, Judah. Are you ready for this? This is what she said. Mm-hmm. Jerry, it is amazing that I trust someone I have never met, you, over the principal of my school who has been there for 4 years.
Yeah.
I'll repeat that. Jerry, it is amazing that I trust someone I have never met before, which is you, over the principal of my school who has been there for 4 years. We have had nearly 24 teachers in Albemarle High School reach out to us this week. And the common denominator of all these messages is fear. The common denominator is asking why repeat offenders are still in the school. The common denominator is bring the school resource officers back to the hallways. And the common denominator, which might be the most damning or concerning, is the lack of trust the teachers have for their principal and for the superintendent's office for fixing the problem. Yeah. The common denominator says the principal's office and the superintendent's office are trying to manage perception by downplaying what's happening.
Or ignoring it.
What is on your brain? Conversation amongst two people here with a fair amount of people watching Judah Wickhauer.
I mean, this is the logical conclusion to getting rid of police. Somebody has to be in charge, and somebody has to put a foot down when things go too far. And when kids are actively fighting each other or not even fighting, beating kids up in school, in the halls, I mean, I think that calls for a serious reassessment of how you're doing business.
Here's a question I ask. You want to play the fight from 2 days ago, the brawl? Let us know when it's on screen. This happened 2 days ago in the hallways of Albemarle High School. This video has been sent to me by teachers and by parents now.
It's playing.
Look at the screen.
Keep it going?
Yeah, look at the screen. Look at the screen. Look at the screen. Please look at the screen. Keep it going. That's not a fight. That is not a fight. I'm going to ask this question. And why don't you go, after it plays one more time, back to a two-shot with us? Let's two-shot it up. Does a teacher need to be seriously hurt? Like seriously hurt before anything is done? Because it does not appear that students getting seriously hurt has an impact on the administration to
intervene
intervene or immediately improve safety circumstances? Does a teacher will they not do anything, the school board or the superintendent's office or the principal's office, until a teacher is seriously hurt?
Would they even do it then? Maybe it'll require I think that oftentimes in the United States, lawsuits are frivolous, but in this case, if that's what it takes to light a fire under the butts of the people in charge, then maybe that's what's necessary. Because if I was a parent and my kid was getting beat up at school, I'd sue the school.
This is a message from a mother of a student in Albemarle High School. Jerry, I know the student that was attacked and he is a good kid. Obviously, no student deserves to be attacked, and I do not know what provoked it, but was shocked when I found out who it was. He has had his struggles, but he is a respectful, kind, and hardworking student. I cannot wait for my oldest to get out of that school. Teachers that listen and watch this fine and fair talk show. Is it going to require one of you to be seriously hurt and hospitalized and injured before the school system does something of merit to prevent this kind of violence from happening? Because the violence is happening student on student, and nothing is changing. You got sex in bathrooms, alleged hazing in locker rooms, and assault in hallways. And this is in a county that spends, and I pull this directly from the Albemarle County website, the 2022-2023 operating budget for Albemarle County Public Schools is $246,458,034. I'll give that number to the viewers and listeners again. The operating budget for Albemarle County Public Schools is $246,458,034. Albemarle County in 2022-2023 school year is spending $18,058 per pupil. That's an uptick from last year of $15,040 per pupil. So Judah, we've seen a $3,000 increase last year versus this year. That's a 20% increase in what the school system is spending per pupil. The operating budget went from basically $250 million, which is this year, and last year it was $211 million. It jumped $35 million. And the school system is asking for even more money next year for its operating budget.
Yeah.
Asking for more money when the money currently in play is not driving results seems, words help me.
It seems presumptuous.
Presumptuous, negligent, poor use of resources, mismanagement.
Yeah.
Concerning.
Sounds a little too much like government.
Sounds like government. Yeah. Albert Graves says, not only the teachers getting hurt, but also students. How much longer before the bullied brings guns to school? How much longer until many scared kids are bringing guns to school? We've seen it happen all over the world, and now it's getting really close to home, and something has to be done now. He says, I have 3 kids in ACPS, and it scares the hell out of me.
Yeah.
Albert L. Graves II. I relayed this online and on air, sir. And speaking of Albemarle County Public Schools, they have filled the interim spot on the Whitehall. They have filled the interim Whitehall seat on the Albemarle County School Board. It's a one-year run. The Albemarle County School Board appointed Dr. Rebecca Berlin. And Dr. Berlin is going to fill David Oberg's seat in the Whitehall District on the Albemarle County School Board. She's got experience in special education, early childhood education, teacher training, and business. Mary McIntyre has done a great job of covering this on Twitter. I applaud Mary for covering the interim Whitehall seat and the school board's process of filling this one-year term. Anything you want to close with the schools? People have asked us for solutions. I thought we offered good solutions yesterday. Solution number one would be you have 4 seats up on the school board next year. Be careful of who you vote for. Solution number 2, you have 3 seats in the Albemarle County Board of Supervisors up for re-election next year. Be careful who you vote for. You have one party in Albemarle County that has had a stranglehold on public office. Ask yourself if some of these candidates have done right by your students, by your kids, and your families to this point. You're asking for solutions. Solutions are ask your elected officials to be very careful with allocating dollars to school systems and to hold school board members accountable before allocating dollars to them. Solutions are school resource officers back in schools. Solutions are prioritizing things like safety and getting kids to school on time over rebranding efforts. And no one is saying rebranding is not important, but the safety of the kids and getting kids to school on time is a priority over rebranding.
No doubt.
Solutions are empowering teachers through potentially additional training and compensation, because right now they are scared and they are ready to do other types of work. These are educated people, college graduates, that should not be risking their health, physical and mental, because repeat offenders are not expelled from schools. Solutions are expulsion. Solutions are, if there are bad apples in the barrel, target the bad apples and remove them from the barrel.
Yeah. I'm sure teachers know or have an idea of who the instigators are.
Exactly.
Some people will jump in and, go along with whatever's going on, but somebody's probably starting it, and you either need to separate them from their friends or just get them out of the school altogether.
Exactly right. Carol Thorpe, the Queen of Jack Jewett. Jerry, on the topic of school resource officers, Dr. Matthew Haas did not give school principals the option to keep SROs in their schools when he eliminated them. But now he wants them to accept the individual responsibility of deciding whether or not an SRO will come back to their school. That's a pretty slick way of empowering the principals with authority they did not have before, while dumping the liability in the lap of any of them whose school is without one in the event a tragedy will find the community finger pointing in their direction.
I would say also dumping the what's the word I'm looking for? It was
the consultants?
No. You said
liability?
Yeah, dumping the liability if they're not there. But if Dr. Haas is leaving it up to individual principals, if they want to bring SRO, that leaves the liability entirely in their hands.
Yeah.
No matter what they choose. If they choose officers and, heaven forbid, something happens because of an officer He's basically saying, I don't want any part of it. I'll let you guys decide and let you take the blame.
That's what he's doing. That's what he's doing. Dr. Haas, when he hires the consultants, the third-party consultants to assess the SOL scores, and the fact that the SOL scores are pretty poor, especially for students of color, bringing in this third-party consultant is a way to insulate himself and his cabinet from culpability and accountability and liability. By telling the principals of the schools, it's your choice whether you want the school resource officers in the hallways or not, that's another opportunity or another strategy that Dr. Haas is utilizing to insulate himself and his cabinet from culpability, accountability, and liability. That right there is strategic at best, disingenuous in reality.
The buck stops there.
As Carol Thorpe said, the superintendent gets paid the big bucks to make the big decisions. If the edict to eliminate SROs was his district-wide purview, so too bringing them back should be his responsibility. Our community should demand that Dr. Haas makes the call for all of them. I agree.
Yeah.
I'm responding to her comment right now. I agree! Exclamation point, enter send. All right, new topic. Talk Peloton Station. Curtis Shaver is a friend of this program. Curtis Shaver has been on this program numerous times. Can you show the photo of Curtis you may be able to find in our archive in holiday wear, smiling, looking at the camera? We had enjoyed some libations on the show, and he was very jolly and likable like he always is. When I describe Curtis to people, I would describe a very likable, jolly, easygoing, quick to smile, friendly individual. He was formerly the executive chef at Hamilton's on the Downtown Mall, a fine dining restaurant. And Curtis, like all of us, wanted to try something new. And what he wanted to try new was owning a business and trying a different approach to food. An approach that was not necessarily white tablecloth, cloth napkin, expensive and fine dining, and instead an approach that was no tablecloth, paper napkin, and tavern cuisine. I used to mountain bike with Curtis. It's on screen. Look at the screen, everyone. This is one of my favorite photos that's ever come from the I Love CVille show. Look at the screen. I love this photo. Do you not?
It's great.
When you look at that photo, does it make you happy?
Yeah. Curtis always makes me happy.
Curtis always makes me happy. He's drinking a White Russian in a Santa hat and a sports coat that has Santa Clauses and stockings and bells and candy canes on it.
Yeah.
It's as good as a photo as we've ever had here.
Holiday perfection.
Holiday perfection. Exactly right. So we used to mountain bike together. This is before I had children. This is before I was married. Heck, before I even met my wife. And he would say, look, I'm looking to do something different. I want to start a business. I want to do something different besides fine dining. I want to be an owner. Mm-hmm. And he loved bicycles. He was working as a bike mechanic at the time, along with being the executive chef at Hamilton's.
Yeah.
He loves food. He loves biking. Loves beer. Loves having fun. Loves music. So he's brainstorming ideas, and the concept was to combine passions. and his passions are bikes, bicycles, approachable food that's priced fairly, that's delicious, great beer, local beer, live music, in a setting that was welcoming to everyone. And he, along with Bill Hamilton and Greg, who's the general manager at Hamilton's, they came up with the concept of Peloton Station. In Peloton Station, in the old, was it Jarman's Gap? On 10th Street, opened.
I think that is what it is.
What, 5 years ago? Was it 5 years ago?
Let's see.
And in a lot of ways, Peloton Station created a new identity for 10th Street. This was before Dairy Market. This was right after big gyms closed, and yes, Red Hub Food Company, or Red Hub Food Co. is a restaurant right down the road, but Red Hub Food Co. more focused on off-site eating, where you go in. Catering and off-site eating.
Yeah, it's the kind of place that you order and go pick it up and bring it to the picnic tables, or the big.
You leave.
Event. Yeah.
Off-site.
Yeah.
So and I'm not throwing shade at Red Hub, but Red Hub did not evolve 10th Street.
Right.
10th Street before Peloton Station was frankly a place that a lot of people would not go. Tenth Street had safety issues, drug dealing. At night, as the day waned into darkness and got closer to midnight or later, you certainly weren't walking around there. This was before Dairy Market. And very similarly to what Beer Run did to that Woolen Mills Hogwaller area, Beer Run made that area. Mas Tapas made Belmont.
Yeah.
Before Mas Tapas, Belmont was a pretty shady area. I used to live in Belmont in 2006, in that area, and it was shady. Now it's yuppie, gentrified, $500,000 homes, Belmont.
Paint on the streets.
$750,000 homes, yeah. And in Belmont, when I was living there in 2006, you would often see, what's the preferred nomenclature now? Houseless individuals, pounding 40s, smoking blunts, and urinating on telephone poles, or passed out on the sidewalk or in the alleyways. And if you were a female in 2006, you were not walking alone in Belmont. I would often walk alone in Belmont, and my guard was always up. And there were many times where the hair on the back of my neck would be like a cat up, because I would turn the corner in Belmont after walking either to a friend's house or from Mas Tapas, and I'd see 3 or 4 dudes that clearly had nowhere to live, passing a joint or doing something else, smoking a blunt, passing a bottle of booze, passing a Mad Dog. And then I just stumbled there, and they looked there, and I'm like, okay, 10th Street, in a lot of ways, that was 10th Street. Because 10th Street didn't really start gentrifying 10th and Page until after Dairy Market was constructed. And there was that row of colorful houses on 10th Street, those expensive ones on 10th Street that have the white picket fences and the fluorescent colors. the ones that stand out from the rest of the neighborhood, the newly constructed homes that are clearly high-dollar homes that a lot of folks from outside the area ended up purchasing because they didn't know truly the fact that the neighborhood had not gentrified yet. Mm-hmm. And you got to give Peloton Station some props. They've made that 10th Street corridor much more family-friendly, much more welcoming and approachable, just like Beer Run did, just like Mas Tapas did, just like the local helped do in Belmont, the restaurant. So I watched Greg and Bill, and in particular Curtis, birth this brand. Spend thousands of their personal hours designing and building and branding and brainstorming and creating and conversating and formulating.
Yeah.
Putting in personal wealth, not just sweat equity, hard-earned money. And they created a restaurant that was dynamite. One that was equal parts family and kids, date night, happy hour, sports bar, bicycle repair shop.
Yeah, that's what I've been hearing. Whenever I hear people talking about Peloton Station, it's always like, especially now that word is getting out that it's closing down. I've heard a lot of people saying, "Man, that was, we didn't have family nights very often, but when we did, Peloton Station was our favorite place." And aside from being too full, sometimes, I've never heard a crossword about Peloton Station.
Absolutely not. Scott Aaronworth in Virginia Beach says, best fried pickles ever at Peloton Station. I watched the Final Four in a packed house at Peloton as the University of Virginia men's basketball team headed to the national championship and captivated this entire community. There at the Final Four with folks like Kevin Quigley, the man in black, with Devin Barkleyski. Devin, I've never been able to pronounce your last name. I'm sorry. And the stuff that's been happening, and guys, there's going to be more closings here. The Hive, the Arts and Crafts Bar in McIntyre Plaza just announced it's closing. It's closing its doors with an active lease.
Yeah.
That puts things in perspective. They're still responsible for the debt on the lease.
Yep.
And the Peloton situation, the lease is up for renewal, so it's a natural place to close.
Yeah.
Because you have to sign whether or not you're going to stay and keep going. So they said the lease is up. It's a natural place to say, hey, it's time to end it.
Yeah.
And there's going to be more locally owned businesses closing that we love. And I'm not going to let the cat out of the bag for the ones that I know that are coming because it's not my place to say. Mm-hmm. But I want to say for all of them that are going through these heartaches, and heartache is an understatement of what's happening, it's been bad luck, and it's not an indication of you and your efforts. When you get hit with a pandemic that no one had ever seen, that is essentially 2.5 years, and coming out of that pandemic where you couldn't have in-house dining, where you had to pivot to takeout only, where you couldn't find labor, where people were afraid to do anything inside, where people literally were instructed by the government to stay in their house, or instructed by the government to patronize big box brands that had lobbyists working on their behalf, like Target and Walmart and Olive Garden and Outback, where the small business owner doesn't have the money to get lobbyists to work on their behalf in Washington, D.C., so the locally owned business is the one that was told by the government to stay away from. You had that fiasco,
Followed by
a time of economic collapse, followed by a time where cost of goods were through the roof,
Yep.
followed by a time of significant labor shortage, followed by a time of social unrest, followed by a time of political upheaval in Charlottesville City, where many people in the Central Virginia community were boycotting spending their dollars in the city because of the craziness of the previous mayor and that council regime. Literally a boycott Charlottesville page out there. I don't get that mindset whatsoever. I understand the previous mayor was unhinged, but to boycott a city, I don't get it at all. But that was a factor undoubtedly that contributed to some difficulties for businesses in this city. You had this like snowstorm of bad luck. I was going to use a profanity, but my wife has insisted that I stop doing it on the show. A snowstorm of bad luck that happened for the last 3 years, basically. Inflation has gotten things completely out of control. Think about the cost of chicken wings. Think about the cost of dry goods. Think about the cost of cleaning supplies. Think about the cost of a cold beer. March 2020, end of 2020, you could get pints around this town for $5. $5 pints, not even during happy hour. I'm talking about regular times. Not even 2 years ago, you can get pints around this time at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock on a Friday night for $5. I would bet you would struggle to find a pint on a Friday night anywhere in this town for $8 or for anything under $8.
yeah.
When a pint of beer goes up $3 in less than 2 years, that is a microcosm for the difficulties of running a hospitality or food and beverage business.
Yeah.
The closings are not indications of effort. They're indications of bad luck. Bad luck. What do you want to add to this?
I mean, there's not really much to add. Get out and support your local economy if you can, but as we know, everybody's struggling now.
Bill McChesney, the mayor of McIntyre, sends me this. Wild Bill. An article from Fox Business. More than 2/3 of Americans are having a hard time affording groceries. Retail technology platform Swiftly reported Wednesday that 69% of shoppers say they are struggling to pay their grocery bills after months of persistently sky-high inflation, and 83% of shoppers currently rely on some form of coupons or loyalty program to put food on the table. Scott Aaronworth, Peloton Station is exactly where you and I first met. It's bad luck. And you close this restaurant, Curtis and this team, with your heads held effing high, dude.
Yeah.
Effing high. And the closings that are on the near horizon, you close with your heads held high. Because the circumstances you have faced are unprecedented.
Yeah.
Jason Burke in Los Angeles. Jason, I'm going to dub you the king of Los Angeles, is watching now. He said, I grew up across the street and attended Albemarle High School. We had an officer at the school. Why did they get rid of the position of school resource officer? They got rid of the position of school resource officers in Albemarle County Public Schools because of wokeism. Because the concept from the superintendent's office was school resource officers targeted certain students, often students that were black or brown. And because of this targeting by the school resource officers, they needed to remove them from the hallways because according to the superintendent's office, this would help create a more equitable playing field. Instead, what it has created is a level of violence and a lack of safety never seen in the history of Albemarle County Public Schools. I feel for these small businesses that are closing. The ones that close because of bad luck, not the ones that close because of malpractice and because of piss poor financial management and because of disingenuous business practice. I don't feel bad for those.
No, you feel bad for the people whose jobs were ruined working for them.
Exactly. Not the ones that are chilling at the house playing video games and smoking weed during work hours. New topic, and we all saw this coming. Deshaun Perry's family attorney has now said that he's going to investigate the University of Virginia and how they handled the mass murder from what was... When was the exact date of the mass? November 13th. Wow. That was now over a month ago. It feels like yesterday. November 13th, the mass murder. The family attorney is Michael Haggard. And Michael Haggard, the family attorney of Deshaun Perry, one of 3 UVA football players that was murdered, has indicated that he will start looking into how the University of Virginia did right and did wrong. And Michael Haggard, if you do some research, has got some experience in mass shootings. In 2018, Michael Haggard represented the families of 2 victims and a teacher injured in the 2018 Parkland High School shooting. I think the University of Virginia, a school and an institution that I attended, that my brother attended, that my father attended, a school and an institution that is paramount to the success of Charlottesville, a town I desperately love. I think the University of Virginia has done a number of things incorrectly. When you have somebody on grounds that has a history, criminal, associated with guns, protocols should change. And the alleged murderer has a history with guns when it comes to arrests and convictions. He has also told other folks in Charlottesville and on grounds that he had guns on him. When it's all said and done, the University of Virginia will have a major payday. It's going to open up the wallet And in the grand scheme of things, that payday is going to be a drop in the bucket for the families because they lost loved ones. But that payday, whether we know how much or not, will happen. And the University of Virginia is going to have protocols in place that are going to change. When students are arrested, I can assure you the University of Virginia is going to be notified in much quicker capacities.
And when somebody comes forward and says that somebody's been talking about weapons, they're not just going to
Take it to an honor system.
They're not just going to accept no answer from the student in
Exactly.
question.
Right now, according to the University of Virginia, it's a self-reported system. If you've been arrested off grounds, you're expected, according to the honor code, to self-report the arrest. The alleged murderer did not do that. And right now, when you talk about having guns on grounds, the University of Virginia has a long, bureaucratic, red tape-ridden protocol of handling that conversation. Those will change.
No doubt.
If you're arrested off grounds, I would imagine the University of Virginia is going to act much more swiftly moving forward. And if you talk about having a gun on your person while on grounds, I would imagine the University of Virginia and Chief Tim Longo of the University Police Department are going to act immediately.
Yeah.
Immediately. As opposed to waiting months. September versus November mass shooting.
Yeah.
And you know what? I hope, and this is coming from a man who bleeds orange and blue, I hope Michael Haggard, the attorney, I hope he has significant success in getting paydays for his clients and pushing the envelope, because that's how safety and change happens. I need to give you the definition of an ADU. A lot of people have been. You want to add to this before I get to the ADU and clear my throat?
No, I think we've said what needs to be said.
Here's the exact definition of an accessory dwelling unit according to city code. The city's zoning ordinance defines an accessory dwelling unit, an ADU, as an independent dwelling unit, the presence and use of which is clearly subordinate to a single-family detached dwelling and in which no more than two people can live in. They are commonly referred to as ADUs, granny flats or in-law suites, and can either be internal to the unit or separate structure in the rear yard. The city has two classifications for accessory apartments. In an interior accessory apartment, when an accessory apartment is contained within the structure of a single-family dwelling, the city considers the unit to be an interior accessory apartment. It will share a common wall, ceiling, or floor with the main house. Examples include basement apartments, attic units, and apartments with an addition attached to the primary resident. There's also an exterior accessory apartment. All other apartments that do not share a common wall, ceiling, or floor with the main house are considered to be an exterior accessory apartment. Examples of this type of apartment include a smaller structure in the rear yard or a unit above a detached garage. I do not think that Hinton Avenue and that shed, do you want to put the shed on, the cottage on screen?
If I can find it. Here we go. It's on.
I do not think the cottage is an ADU because the property owner is not living on site.
How would they do that?
What do you mean?
You're saying the property owner doesn't live in the house up front?
The property owner for an ADU will have to live on site in either the primary house or the accessory apartment.
Right. Gotcha. So you're saying that you're pretty sure the owner is not living in the house up front?
If you were the owner of this Hinton Avenue listing, of this Hinton Avenue property, you have a pretty nice house on Hinton Avenue that's been converted into an over-under duplex. I don't know for certain, but common sense would suggest the owners of this property are probably not living in the duplex. I may be wrong on that. But by definition of an ADU, the owner is living on site. We know the owner is not living in the cottage because the cottage is for rent.
Yeah, definitely.
So the owner would have to live in the over-under duplex of the primary house.
Yeah.
For it to be an ADU.
Right.
And the more I think about this, the more I wonder if the I Love CVille Network has highlighted a rental that may or may not be above board with the city of Charlottesville.
Who knows? It's been around for a while.
But it certainly hasn't gotten the attention it's gotten this week.
No. A lot of things haven't gotten the kind of attention that has been easily accessible in the last few years.
Jason Burke makes this comment, and I'm going to get to the comments from Anonymous as well. Jason Burke, who's a realtor, the king of Los Angeles, makes a decent comment that an ADU can have an owner renting all units and not living on site as long as the footprint was there previously is an ADU. Anonymous made a similar comment. Anonymous, the I Love CVille Network's version of Deep Throat, said this. Jason Burke, you should listen to this. This is from Deep Throat via DM on Twitter. Man knows zoning inside and out. I'm going to my DMs to get it. I want to read it verbatim.
Jason, what part of LA are you from?
Jason Burke is a Charlottesvillian who's now in Los Angeles. Yeah, let him know. Judah's got ties to LA.
I know. I mean, what part does he live in now?
So on the GIS, he says, Anonymous says, one sad thing about the Charlottesville GIS, not typical of other GIS systems of other cities, is that there is no accurate unit count by parcel. Anonymous said he did some programming to try to get at the right answer. He used the 911 master address list as a source. In that master address list, 804 Hinton has only Unit A and Unit B. However, there is also an 806 Hinton Avenue that seems to be part of the same parcel. So maybe that is the shed. Anonymous says there is supposed to be a conditional use permit, but he cannot find it within the city records. He says he needs to do a little more work. He said a complicating factor is that many uses are grandfathered in if they predate the 1990s rezoning. So on the question of zoning, Anonymous says, that's a different topic. So Anonymous adds this. So the shed does seem to be in the database as a structure and a valid address. No PUP for it, but possibly if it has been used this way since the 1990s, no PUP would be required. There are no permit at all in the database for this parcel, oddly. Rules on ADU would require the owner to live there, but again, if this use predates the 1990s, maybe that's not required. It's very unclear. There's another requirement that says that the ADU needs to be at least 5 feet from the property line, which is not the case for this one. Again, not sure if it was grandfathered due to age. Anonymous is a smart guy. I wonder if that ADU is legal. Whether it's an ADU or if this happened before 1990, which allowed it to get grandfathered in. And he says he's Silver Lake, before now Sherman Oaks, in Los Angeles.
All right. I lived in Northridge when I was there. And my aunt is I don't know about famous, but she's the parrot lady in, where is she? Birds and More. I think it's near Tarzana, but I'd have to double check.
We'll follow that cottage closely. I want to talk about the comparisons to Charlottesville and Austin, Texas on the show. And it was a topic brought to our attention by Bob Yarborough, the king of Redfields. And Bob Yarborough sent me an article from Texas Monthly. And the article from Texas Monthly, which Bob Yarborough has said is probably the best publication in the Lone Star State, talks about Austin, Texas. And Bob Yarborough has called it a cautionary tale for Charlottesville. Bob Yarborough also said, fortunately for Charlottesville, we do not carry the burden of a state capital like Austin does. So the similarities with Austin and Charlottesville are big-time university. UT Austin is a university with pedigree and prestige that gets some of the best students in the country attending.
Yeah.
You got an emerging tech scene. You got venture capital. You got limited housing. Austin has changed its zoning code to allow flexible zoning to create more density. But one of the items that stood out to Bob Yarborough from the Texas Monthly article about Austin is this paragraph, and I'll read it verbatim. Though residents new and old agree that Austin desperately needs more affordable housing, Austin's restrictive land use code and neighborhood NIMBYism have made it not only more expensive, but even more segregated than it already was. Between 2010 and 2020, the city's African American population dipped from 8% of the total population to 7% of the total population. Aggressive courting of the tech sector, whose employees are disproportionately white, turned what was once a comfortable home for a diverse mix of students and state government employees into a playground for rich out-of-towners. Does that not sound like Charlottesville?
There are some similarities I hear in there.
Anonymous says, here's a story to feel free to use about Austin, Texas. This is Anonymous talking. Deep Throat. When I was living in Austin, Texas in the early 2010s, a few big condo buildings went up in the old warehouse district downtown. New zoning allowed it, if I recall correctly. At first, they were a bust. Not much local demand for that sort of product. But the developers worked on finding out-of-town buyers. You are probably familiar with the South by Southwest Festival. Some of these buildings held open houses during South by Southwest, hoping to interest some of the many wealthy out-of-towners in for the festival. A friend of mine who was a hedge fund bigwig at the time in New York was coming down for the festival and asked to hang out. While we were downtown, he noticed the open house, and having been intrigued a little bit by Austin in the time he had been there, decided to take a look. Now, these were very nice apartments overlooking Town Lake, but they were priced at levels that most locals laughed at as being ridiculous. So I think we ended up looking at some 2 or 3 bedroom apartments that cost maybe $1.5 million. Well, this guy from New York thought it was laughably cheap, and he ended up buying an apartment. And then on his visits to stay in this apartment, he found Austin so nice that he decided to move his team down from New York. So within a couple months, you now had 10 highly paid people down there buying apartments and houses in Austin, Texas. And God only knows how many service employees their demand drew to town. The influx of such people changed the town considerably and made it a much more attractive place for people like wealthy hedge fund guys. When I moved in, the establishment that was considered the best restaurant in town had been considered such for probably 2 or 3 decades. By the time I left, if you looked up the critics' list of the top 20 restaurants, none of those restaurants, when I was there, were in the top 20. Now you have spas, museums, private schools, and surf parks there. It's called the amenity effect. And the amenity effect blew the supply effect out of the water. I want you guys to follow San Francisco, Austin, Texas, Boulder, Colorado, Asheville, North Carolina, as what Charlottesville could become, the Charlottesville area. I'll include Albemarle County if we're not careful. My parents live outside Asheville and Hendersonville. I've been going to Asheville, North Carolina for a long period of time now. And Asheville, North Carolina has gotten to the point where it's a playground for the super rich. Mm-hmm. It is extremely expensive, Asheville, North Carolina now. Friday edition of the talk show. You want to close with some final thoughts?
Support your local businesses. They may not be around forever. And protect our kids.
Yeah.
I can't imagine being a kid going into a place where I thought there was a chance that I'd get not just bullied but beaten up in a hallway with people filming and teachers watching and for nothing to be done.
You get jumped by 5 kids in a hallway of a public school while 3 dozen other kids are live streaming the assault for the entire school to see later. And then you have to go to school
the next day and
the next day
and the next day
if you're healthy enough. But when you do become healthy physically, you have to look at every student in the eye in the school that watch you get your tail kicked in the hallway. And it's all happening at a time when you're a teenager going through emotions and hormones and levels of vulnerability you've never experienced in your life.
Yeah.
That is the definition of brutally difficult. It's the Friday edition of the show. For Judah Wickhauer, I'm Jerry Miller. Thank you kindly for joining us.